Our next author is Mohandas Gandhi, who I'm sure is familiar to you. He's the great leader of the campaign for home rule in India, which is to say the campaign to get England to leave and give rule back to the Indians. You can see by his dates, he was only a little earlier than Heidegger. He was a 20th century figure. And he was famous for his way of pursuing the great goal of Indian independence and home rule, which he did by a strictly moral method of nonviolence, what he called passive resistance. There's a short reference to that in our reading for today. And we can see some of the principles in it in the style of the talk, which shows Gandhi putting a great deal of faith in the power of a sincere and pure morality. That Gandhi's way was the way of nonviolence, which was that he wouldn't fight a war. He wouldn't do immoral things in order to pursue a moral end. And it did astonish, and it still astonishes the world, that a great change in political reality could be brought about this way. Now, I think the argument of the text is well within your capacity, and it would be good for you to work out his meaning on his own and bring that to our forum written discussion and our live discussion by Zoom. But perhaps if we review the article, there will be points that can be cleared up to help your own reading. I've given you two versions of the text. One standard landscape orientation 2-column page that is suitable for printing. I did those originally because I wanted you all to print that out. I've given you also a narrow version, which I was able to read off my phone, and you can choose whatever version of the text is useful to you, but the page numbers, of course, are different. But I am here showing you the narrow version. Now, this talk, it's the text of a lecture, as was true for Heidegger, has acquired the title Economic versus Moral Progress. And that fits it fits the talk, and it fits our syllabus. Rousseau introduced us to the question of whether progress was good, whether progress is from something worse to something better. And Gandhi investigates these matters in the spirit of Rousseau. The talk, when it was given, had a question to serve as a kind of a title, which fits a little more exactly. So does economic progress clash with real progress? Gandhi defines real progress as moral progress. And the question then overall is about the moral value, the moral effect of wealth. What does progress or growth, which is a big concern for politicians in the modern age, what does that have to do with the morals of the people who live within that system, that economy which is growing? Now, Gandhi begins his talk by making a very firm denial that he really knows anything about economics in the ordinary sense. And that will lead up to his redefining the term in unexpected ways. But he begins by announcing quite clearly that he isn't going to pretend to be an expert on the subject of this club that he's addressing, this economic society. But this leads to Our first hint at Gandhi's character, the extreme firmness of his will, and his ability to take his direction from inside, even when that put him at odds with the people around him. So after explaining that he really has no business addressing this society, and no expertise that he can draw on to speak about the things he's speaking about, he nevertheless says that he is quite firmly resolved to do it. And this is a characteristic statement, particularly this last. Sometimes in life you know from inside yourself that you are doing what's right. And then Gandhi being Gandhi, he no longer bothered about opposition from outside. So the voice within tells him to trust himself. And what it tells him to believe in the firm practical power, the worldly power of a pure morality. Now, early in his talk, Gandhi points to an important complication with the argument, and it would be good for you to work out how you think he handles that, what he says, and whether you think what he says is correct and persuasive. He begins with a challenge to his point of view, which is based on something fairly simple, that India is one of the poorest countries on earth. That's still somewhat true, much less than during the time when Gandhi gave this talk. That tremendous poverty was just a fact of life there. And some of Gandhi's opponents thought that made a clear moral case for economic progress. And Gandhi doesn't dispute this all the way. He says that grinding poverty is very hard on morality. When you're terribly, terribly poor, it's hard to be a moral person, and you don't have enough left over to think about your duty when your material needs are so great. And Gandhi does not deny that, or deny that it's a special Indian problem. Nevertheless, he persists with his argument, and in the long paragraph that runs from page 4 to page 6 in this narrow version, especially page 6, he makes his most important points. And it would be good for you to concentrate on those and to see how you evaluate his way of working out that challenge. Does he address it properly, or does he ignore it? Now, here on page 7, he gives us a quote in old-fashioned language: "Take no thought for the morrow." So the morrow would be tomorrow. So the quote simply means don't worry too much about the future. Concentrate on the present. Now, the religious authority Gandhi quotes most often in this text is Jesus in the Christian version, according to a standard translation of the Bible called the King James Version, which comes from early in the 17th century and uses the language of that day, which is why some words, especially the verb forms, seem a bit strange. But Gandhi, although he mentions a whole pantheon of a whole long list of wise religious people and saints and sages, quotes Jesus most often, he seems to have a proper Hindu sense that there are many gods, and that they come in different forms, and that the same message can be spoken by different messengers with slightly different spin, but as a Hindu, he seems to be willing to welcome a whole crowd of religious and moral authorities, and to take what's good from each. And his quotes from Jesus have this special unworldly character, as opposed to economics. Economics always takes thought for the moral. As Heidegger assured us, economics is always planning for the future in a quite practical way. But Jesus took the opposite view. Do not make plans. Now, Jesus' thought when he says take no thought for the morrow seems to be that human beings should not concern themselves with trying to control the future. And this meaning is compatible with Gandhi's talk, that the plan of the world, whatever it is that the future will bring, that's not in our power and not for us to worry about. God will take care of that. Our duty is to be good in this moment, and to trust that God will take care of the future for us. And that is a way incompatible with modern economics, which always wants to find a way to control what seems difficult to control, large whole economies, large free markets, and to make humans responsible for their own fate. That would be the point of economics, so that we can be able to control what seems outside any one person's control. It might help to look at the long quote from the Gospel according to Mark. It starts here on page 9 of the Moral Version. Now, here on page 9 of the narrow version of the text, Gandhi tells a story from many identifies as Saint Mark. Now, a little background would probably be helpful. In the Christian Bible, there are 4 separate accounts of the life of Jesus, which agree mostly and in some places disagree. Those are called Gospels, which has become just a general word for a story of the life of Jesus, but it's an old-fashioned word for good news. It's something Jesus brought good news, that is, you can be saved from death and find your way to heaven. So those 4 accounts are distinguished by the names of their authors, and Mark was one of the men who wrote one of those accounts. And so we have the Gospel according to Mark. Saint is an honorary term for a holy person. Now, the stories of the lives of Jesus are often stories about Jesus' close followers, known as the disciples. And for them, very often there are stories about how they first met Jesus and came to join his movement and to share their lives with him, to follow him around and do his work. And along with those stories are stories of the near misses and the failures. People who approached Jesus and who might have become part of his original band of followers, but for one reason or another do not. And Jesus often uses those occasions to make distinctions among people and their motives and their situations, and to teach moral lessons. And so Gandhi is concentrating on one of those stories, and it will probably help to go through some of the details and bring out what's behind this story. It's somewhat unfamiliar in an unfamiliar kind of language from this King James Bible with its old-fashioned English. And that can wait for the next video.